I would now like to call upon our last presenter for the day, Danielle Nazarewich from Abbotsford Community Services. Danielle is the program coordinator for diversity education at Abbotsford Community Services. She has a passion for cross-cultural communication and interfaith understanding. Please help me welcome Danielle.
Thank you so much. So I was invited here today to speak about how we in Abbotsford are responding to discrimination and hate. And I was specifically invited to talk about our Fraser Valley Human Dignity Coalition, as well as a recent anti-Islamophobia forum that we hosted. And so I just want to start with a bit of background about who we are, and then I'll dive both into that program as well as that event. So I'm here representing Abbotsford Community Services, which is a nonprofit, multi-service, multi-funded, community-based social serving agency. Each year, almost 40,000 people come through our doors looking for help through one or more of our 80 programs. From newborn babies to seniors, we help people of all ages. From women escaping violence to people struggling with addictions, we help people in crisis. And from newcomers in Canada to people with developmental disabilities, we help people feel like they belong. One of our 7 departments is the Multicultural and Immigrant Integration Services Division, and that is what I'm a part of. And I'm part of their Diversity Education Program, which is a program designed to provide the community with education, support, and resources on diversity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. We manage a variety of programs currently, including our Abbotsford Local Immigration Partnership, the Urban Eco Collective, which is a group of young adults working on food justice and food sovereignty. And we operate some community-based research, as well as organizing against racism and hate. And so I'll give you a little bit of background about this organizing against racism and hate and the Fraser Valley Human Dignity Coalition. So in 1999, the Diversity Education Program received funding through National Crime Prevention to establish a community response team against hate and discrimination. So this team was called together. They're comprised of community members and stakeholders, and together they took on the name the Fraser Valley Human Dignity Coalition. And in the pursuit of social justice and equity, the coalition promotes the values of human rights and dignities and a safe and healthy community for all. And they meet quarterly, and one of their early tasks was to develop a protocol, an Abbotsford community protocol for responding to discrimination and hate. And we did this. Just as communities have mechanisms in place to respond to disasters or traumas, crisis situations, we developed a protocol with the intent to give the community the tools to be prepared in the event of a critical hate-motivated incident. And so our protocol was created as a community-based mechanism for the quick assessment and responsive action towards critical incidences of discrimination and motivated incidences. So our first framework was developed in 2004, and our document was revised again in 2008, and then in 2014 with Organizing Against Racism and Hate funding. And one of the things that it includes is this one-page, step-by-step resource guide for members of the community to look at this with one page if they know that something's happening and have an idea of what to do. So if there's an incident that occurs that has violence happening, you can refer them immediately, as our friend from the RCMP said, to call 911 to provide details of the incident. And then for community members who are there to protect the victims, to help instill some order if it's applicable, and be careful not to disturb the scene, and then to support, especially the victim, to acknowledge what they're going through, and those types of things until extra services arrive. And then for nonviolent incidences of discrimination, I encourage people to listen to the victim, acknowledge what they're going through, and then refer if they're able, to our diversity education and resource services programs. And so what happens when you refer is a similar process to Krish's hotline, but they call a diversity education office where there's resource workers available, and we listen first to their incident, to what's been going on for them, help them to acknowledge, as we've heard, the sort of type of discrimination that might be happening, whether it's racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, all those types of things. Figure out if they do need extra community resources, if they need referrals to counseling, if they need extra support services. Often what we find is that people are looking for an outlet of understanding, for somebody to acknowledge the intersections that they might be experiencing, as many of our colleagues have mentioned. And what we do with that information is another step of the Fraser Valley Human Dignity Coalition. So our coalition meets quarterly. We get together and we talk about the incidences that we've heard about. We share the classified, non-sensitive information with one another, but we talk and we assess and we see if there's any trends happening in our community. If there's lots of incidences of sexism, of homophobia, and we talk about what type of community response we can take. And sometimes it's anything from marches to creating petitions to hosting educational events and activities. And that leads me, just into one of our recent events was an anti-Islamophobia forum. Because as part of community services, we were the recipients of over 200 Syrian refugees in the past year, and we were getting lots of calls, especially at the diversity education office, to find out who these refugees are, why they're coming, who invited them, what it's going to be like, how it's going to change the community, how teachers could talk to their students about it, how businesses could be prepared, how other services could be prepared. And so we did, with the information that we had from being part of the multicultural department, we visited a couple different locations. We visited the library, shared a bit about the history, people coming, refugees, what they could expect, and lots of people had questions about integration, what they could be doing, how they could help. And then there was also, in different locations, some resistance, some anti-immigrant, anti-refugee sentiment that would come out, some questions of hesitation, and why are these people here, and why are they coming, and many of those things that we've heard before. And so with the feedback that we were receiving, we thought in our office that it would be a great idea to start holding some public education events in our community. And so we gathered our Human Dignity Coalition, and we gathered our social integration working group of our local immigration partnership, and got together and talked about what type of event would be helpful. And our community members said that they wanted to learn about stereotypes, about how to break them down, where they come from. They wanted to have a dialogue, and they wanted to talk about what inclusive practices they can be implementing in their workplaces and in their community groups. And so that's just what we did. We hosted a forum called Welcoming Newcomers and Refugees, Inclusive Practices, and Beyond the Stereotypes. And we invited stakeholders and community members. We had about 60 people in attendance, and so we opened up with an activity to help us understand stereotypes, break them down, interact with them, and proceeded with a panel discussion. So we invited some local Muslim immigrants in our community to share their experiences with their neighbors in Abbotsford, and I think that was a very impactful thing because it also brought it down to the localized level of what is happening here, what are our neighbors actually experiencing in our community. And then together we had a dialogue, and each shared what's been working, what's not working, what one another needs help with, and how we can continue to support. And our panelists shared with the group ideas about how they would like the community of Abbotsford to move forward, perhaps hosting an Islam Awareness Week to promote positive aspects of the culture and beginning to understand the faith and those types of things. And so it was a really beneficial event. Our community members deeply enjoyed it and made lots of connections with one another. Like we had people from a museum being like, how can this place become more welcoming? And them meeting Muslims for the first time and figuring out, there's some things we can do. We can invite you and we can talk together. And so one of the key outcomes and key things that we hear after doing educational events is that our community always wants more. And so that is what we do as the Human Dignity Coalition. We work together, figure out what our community is working on and needs, and try to, connect all our stakeholders and do things to provide education. So that is us. Thank you.